You're watching Outnumbered. I'm Harris Faulkner. Here today, Fox Business anchor Dagan McDowell, attorney and Fox News contributor Emily Compagno, radio host and Fox News contributor Leslie Marshall. Joining us on the virtual couch in the center seat today, former Arkansas governor and Fox News contributor as well, Mike Huckabee. Great to see you in the new year.
Well, thank you. Great to be with you.
Congressman Cohen is saying that if you're male and white and in the military, you're dangerous to the rest of us? So, Leslie, you know, look, when they vet people, I mean, we don't exactly know what we're going to find out. I don't know if you can vet the entire planet. I would say that there are people who are bad and good everywhere, every corner of the planet. Are we just going to vet the planet, that sort of thing? Where are we with this? Does Biden need to express some understanding and gratitude for all these men and women? I don't know why Cohen thinks it's mostly men in the Guard. As the governor pointed out, these are family people. These are your neighbors.
A few things here. First of all, Dagan, that's the cussing off the air is one of the reasons I love you, girl. But going forward, saying something like that, I do believe is irresponsible because the overwhelming majority of Trump supporters, regardless of their race or their gender, do not agree with and did not participate with what happened on January 6th. However, what we do see with the facts of those that have been arrested, 9 former military, 1 from Texas. I know that Governor Abbott in Texas was upset, questioning that, an Army reservist from New Jersey, a former National Guardsman from Massachusetts, and the FBI this morning reported that they're seeing some ramblings online that some people are allegedly planning to disguise themselves as National Guard members. One of the reasons they want everyone vetted. It's not that they don't trust the National Guard, it's they don't trust some of these fringe element extremists that had the mindset of those involved last week on January 6th.
Calls from liberal media and big tech to deprogram and deplatform Trump supporters are growing after the Capitol Hill riots. Former news anchor Katie Couric sounding off on Republican members of Congress who voted against certifying the election results. Social media sites like Twitter and Facebook banned the President Trump, and then Amazon, Google, and Apple worked in coordination to basically shut down the app, the social media platform Parler. And just last week, Forbes ran an op-ed warning businesses not to hire any Trump communications officials. Leslie, the goal is to censor, silence, shut down, and even put out of business anybody who's not in compliance with your views. That's essentially what we're seeing from many on the left, led by kind of the big technology monopolies.
I wouldn't agree with that sentiment. First of all, if you look at a company like Twitter or any company, they don't just have an American consumer base. They have an international consumer base. And any company cares about 2 things, and that is the bottom line and their image. And they don't want to be connected to the perception that they were connected in any way and be responsible in any way, because they could be held responsible legally by people suing them, for example, as to what happened January 6th. And that's where I think the terms deprogramming come from. Not for the majority of Trump supporters, like I said earlier, are not the people that stormed the Capitol, but the people that did storm the Capitol did so. Some of them are even using as a defense. I'm just doing what the president told me to do. Even Republicans in the party, and it's not just Liz Cheney, new Republicans that are coming in are saying that they need to look at the party and they need to reform their party, if you will, and decide, is it going to be the Republican Party of people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and QAnon, or is it going to be the Republican Party that once was? And I think the latter prevails among voters and among those elected officials. And that's where I think all of this comes from. I certainly can't stand censorship. I don't want one opinion silenced over the other. But left or right, I don't want anybody to have rhetoric that could lead to violence. The First Amendment doesn't cover that, and it's very dangerous, as we saw on January 6th.
Former Secretary of State Hilary Clinton hinting that President Trump may have somehow looped in Russian President Vladimir Putin on the Capitol riot. Leslie, but I would have said it like the title of her book, What Happened? It's kind of a question mark.
What happened?
Leslie.
Dagan, you asking me? That's actually how I said the title of her book the day after the election. Look, what happened on January 6th does not help us with the way the world perceives us. And quite frankly, it does, as Speaker Pelosi said, help Putin and Russia to say, yeah, democracy, leader in freedom, look, you are no different than us. The way the people reacted and the way you responded to those people that reacted in that manner and that were inciting violence and an insurrection at our nation's capital on January 6th. I don't think the president was on the phone with Vladimir Putin or with Russia. We even have some eyewitness accounts to what the president was saying or doing. Ben Sass has already told us his perception of what was taking place there. So quite frankly, I don't agree that he was on the phone with Putin, but what happened January 6th certainly makes somebody like Putin puff his chest out more, with Russia looking down its nose more so at the United States than they have in the past.
Well, a Black Lives Matter demonstration turned violent in New York City just last night as protesters were fighting with police. Dozens of people were arrested. 11 officers were hurt. Hundreds of demonstrators were blocking traffic, vandalizing property, throwing bottles. One of those bottles hit a police captain in the helmet. The protest came after a New York Times article described last year's Black Lives Matter protests as, quote, the summer's isolated incidents of looting and property destruction. Leslie?
I would have to say that I disagree with the language referring to what happened. The violence that took place, although the majority of protesters were peaceful, what we did see, especially after confrontations with the police in areas like the governor mentioned, we saw terrible amounts of vandalism, we saw looting, we saw violence. That is completely wrong. However, I do feel there's a huge difference between what happened over the summer and on January 6th, because although the violence, the looting, the rioting, all illegal, all wrong, and I condemn it, but on January 6th, there was insurrection, seditionism, rioting, and storming the Capitol with the alleged attempt to hurt and harm elected officials, perhaps even kill them, according to the FBI, and in addition to that, to try and overthrow the will of the people via a free and fair election that had not been proven to have widespread voter fraud. Very different.
The left has warped, distorted, and defiled the American story with deceptions, falsehoods, and lies.
President Trump there announcing the formation of the 1776 Commission. It's aimed to promote patriotic education and counter what he sees as the left's shaming of America's founders. In particular, the New York Times 1619 Project, which argues that America was founded on slavery and racism. In the administration's final hours, the 1776 Commission has released a scathing report going after what it calls re-education attempts inside schools that reframe the United States as, quote unquote, an evil country. Leslie.
Truth. We need to teach our children truth, even if it's ugly. Slavery was ugly. What we did to Native Americans was ugly. It's ugly that we see that some children have not been taught about or don't know about the Holocaust. However, we do have great things about this nation, and all can be truth, and that's what I want my 12 and 13-year-old to be told, the good, the bad, and the ugly, but I want them to know the true history of our nation, because there is wonderful good and some terrible bad.